The door slammed shut behind me, hard, and in that moment the silence in the house felt suffocating. I realized then that everything I relied on was gone. Everything I believed in. Everything I dared to hope for. From the moment she first arrived, I should have known that her stories would change my life. Her name was Maya. She stepped into my broken little world like sunlight through cracked glass, tender yet dangerous. I had grown up in the dusty neighborhood of Laurel Street, a place where dreams sat quietly on the shelf, collecting cobwebs. My father worked 2 jobs, my mother never spoke about the bills that piled up each month, and I carried around an invisible weight in my chest, fear of disappointment. I was 22, stuck in a routine cleaning shift at a local café, watching time pass me by as though I were the one standing still and the world moving on without me. Then Maya walked in. She arrived in late afternoon, the sky a bruise purple, her fingers drumming on the counter while she waited for her coffee. Her eyes were bright, curious, determined, wounded. I caught a glimpse of the notebook she always carried, its cover cracked, edges frayed, filled with scribbles and sketches. She looked like someone who refused to surrender, even when life demanded that she fold. We started talking. At first it was about the weather, the cafe's unreliable Wi-Fi, the book she was reading. Then it became about deeper things, her ambition to become a painter, her memories of a childhood home that no longer existed, her fear of failing at something she loved. I told her about my father's long night shifts, about how I'd given up piano lessons because I didn't want to feel the awkwardness of not being good. She said, "Why not try again?" And I laughed, but the laugh held something raw, because deep inside I knew, I had tried, and I failed. Or rather, I stopped trying. She pressed a gentle hand on mine one afternoon as I confessed that I didn't know what I wanted, only that I didn't want this life. The grip was light but powerful, and in that moment I felt possible things flicker inside. The next morning I showed up for work, and I actually hoped. Nearly every day after, I would find her working in the little art nook of the cafe, canvas taped to a window, brushes dipped in raw color, the hum of the espresso machine underneath. She painted with a ferocity that unbalanced me, her hand stayed steady even when her eyes collected tears. One evening she stayed later than usual. The cafe was closing, the last few customers left. I gathered the cleaning supplies, reached across the counter. "Hey," I said. She looked up, brush in hand, and her painting took shape, a phoenix rising from ashes, vivid oranges and reds dancing up the canvas. "I couldn't stop," she said softly. "What's the fire for?" I asked. "For everything that tries to burn you down and make you quiet," she answered. "And for the chance to speak again." I stared into the colors as though they held my reflection. Because there was a flame inside me too, I just didn't know how to light it. As weeks turned into months, our friendship deepened. We shared lunches, long walks, whispered confidences. She told me about her younger sister, Sarah, who had gone away to college but returned home sick, alone, the burden of caring heavy on Maya's shoulders. She told me about her father who refused to talk about the cancer. She told me about nights when she painted until 3 a.m, using her tears to temper the acrylics. It wasn't glamorous, it was messy, human, courageous. I told her that I had a notebook too, hidden in my drawer. I confessed that once I had written a short story in school and got an award, but I buried it because I didn't think I could ever measure up again. I admitted that every night I lay awake wondering if this was all I was going to be. She didn't laugh this time. She took my hand and said, "Then let's try together." Our plan formed in quiet moments. She would host a small art showing in the community center, nothing lavish, but enough to show her work and the story behind each piece. I would write the story of the paintings, my words bringing voice to her colors. Together we would open a door we never believed existed. The first challenge hit hard. Her father's condition worsened. Sarah called her in tears. Maya spent nights at the hospital corridor, waiting for test results, painting less and less. I offered to help with errands, but the guilt in her eyes became heavy, she felt torn between responsibility and hope. I found myself pushing my own fear aside. I picked up brushes, painted small canvases alongside her, wrote draft after draft of my story under the humming fluorescent light of my bedroom. I didn't feel brave, I felt exposed. But my heart beat louder than my doubt. One afternoon, mere weeks before the exhibition, disaster struck. The community center's air conditioning failed just hours before the event. The paintings were starting to sweat, the paint gently drooping, the canvases warping in the heat. The staff called to say they might need to cancel. Maya collapsed into tears. In that moment, I saw her flame flicker. I also saw her fear double. She looked at me and whispered, "It's over." I remembered the café's door slamming shut in the beginning. How I felt the world outside already moving on without me. And I realized, this was our moment. If we let it slip, we'd be back at that door, listening to it echo shut again. I rallied the volunteers. We carried the paintings outside under trees in the small park across the street. I borrowed fans from nearby shops, taped up signs, set out chairs in the shade. People began to trickle in, friends, neighbors, strangers drawn by the story flyers we made. Maya's sister Sarah walked in with 2 flower bouquets. She was pale but smiling. That smile spoke of survival, of love. The event began. I read my story, words about fire and ashes, about someone who refused to be invisible, about the magic when 2 people hold the spark for each other. Maya's paintings draped the trees along the walkway, colors blooming in the afternoon sun. She stood by, voice shaking, but there. And then she walked forward and said, "This is for my sister, for my father, for the nights I painted when the world told me to stop." Her voice found steadiness. Tears rose in many eyes. I looked at mine and knew, I had found something too. The night after the exhibition, as the park cleared and the chairs folded, Maya and I sat on the bench by the lamppost. The bugs chirped faintly, the air cool. She brought out her notebook and flipped to a new page, blank. "What's next?" I asked. She looked at me and said, "I don't know. But I'll keep going." I took a deep breath. Me too. For the next months, things were harder than before. We balanced part-time work, the unpaid bills, aspiration. Maya's father had a major surgery. Sarah's recovery was slow. I got a call telling me the short story I wrote was shortlisted for a local magazine, but the prize was small and the competition fierce. I felt the familiarity of fear creeping in. What if you don't win? What if it's nothing? But something had shifted in me. The door that had slammed behind me was no longer a barrier, it was a memory. I stepped forward. When the magazine published my story, I showed it to Maya. The words sat there in print. Sometimes the brightest flames come from places that have been broken. She squeezed my hand, whispering, "There you are." And I realized, it wasn't about winning the prize or selling a painting. It was about showing up in spite of fear, about lending your fire to someone else when their spark is dimming, and in doing so, finding your own. One evening, we sat on the rooftop of her apartment, city lights flickering around Karachi like distant stars. We were tired. The wind came warm from the sea, carrying salt and hope. We raised cups of chai. I said, "Remember when you asked me why I didn't try again?" She smiled. "Yes." I said, "Thank you for not letting me stay silent." She touched her brush and laughed, "And thank you for helping me speak again." Between us, the night held something beautiful. Not perfection. Not a complete victory. But movement. Progress. Hand in hand, facing the unknown. And that's the message we carry: fire doesn't have to roar. It just needs a small spark. A companion by its side. A chance to burn brighter than the darkness thought possible. So if you're listening, if you feel the door just slammed behind you, if you've stopped trying, remember, the stage is not beyond you. The notebook need not stay blank. The brush need not stay still. Let someone in. Let someone hold your hand. Stand. Reach. Begin again. Because your fire still deserves a rise. And so do you.